On a peaceful Sunday morning, gentle autumn sunlight bathed the cobblestones of Beacon Hill. The Mitchell family's traditional brownstone was hosting its monthly family brunch. The dining room, surrounded by antique furniture, was filled with the soft glow of a chandelier that had been passed down through generations. By the window, a Boston fern that the Mitchell family had tenderly nurtured for over 150 years spread its deep green leaves gracefully. The plant's history was intertwined with the history of the house itself. "Kate, did you make this quiche yourself?" Patricia Mitchell raised her silver dessert fork with a slightly sarcastic smile. Her elegant appearance in a tweed jacket epitomized Boston's high society. Sarah was so skilled at French cuisine. Her coco vin was always a hit at church charity events. Kate Mitchell momentarily flinched at her mother-in-law's words but maintained her graceful smile. Her composure in a navy cashmere dress reflected the confidence she had cultivated during her years in investment banking. "Yes, I referenced Julia Child's French cooking. I heard Julia lived here in Beacon Hill too." Across the table, her husband Robert cleared his throat awkwardly. His gesture of running fingers through his graying hair lacked his usual composure. For 3 years, Kate, a successful senior analyst at an investment bank, had been battling subtle tensions during these elegant Sunday brunches. "Hey, Kate," a bright voice broke the tension. It was her sister-in-law Emily. "Would you help me with my wedding preparations? We're planning the ceremony at the cathedral, followed by a reception at the Four Seasons." Emily, a brilliant pediatrician in her white coat, had always been a warm ally to Kate. "Of course, Emily. Anything I can do." At those words, Patricia set down her cherished Wedgwood teacup and said casually, "But dear, you're not familiar with high society etiquette, are you? Our traditional style might be quite different. For instance, even addressing wedding invitations has quite complex rules." The antique china trembled slightly. Kate's hands were shaking. Robert looked at his wife, but again couldn't say anything. His silence made the heavy atmosphere in the house even thicker. "Mother," Emily said quietly but firmly. "Kate is my sister-in-law. She's family. Her taste is impeccable." Everyone praised her speech at the recent charity gala. Patricia smiled gracefully. "Yes, of course," her voice was warm, but her eyes were cold. "It's just that Mitchell family traditions must be preserved. Especially since Emily's wedding will be the talk of Boston." The sunlight remained warm, the silverware gleamed beautifully, and the flower arrangement on the table was perfect. The family's dedicated florist had served the Mitchell household for over 30 years. Yet in this elegant space, invisible cracks were silently spreading, one after another. Kate took a sip of tea and straightened her back. Coming from a middle-class family, she had graduated from a prestigious university on scholarship and built her current position through talent and hard work. For her, these brunch hours felt like an elegant social masquerade. Standing before the fireplace where Sarah's photograph hung, she sometimes felt like she would forever be a substitute. "By the way," Patricia said, as if suddenly remembering something. "Next Wednesday, there's an executive committee meeting for St. Paul's Church charity event. Kate, would you like to join us?" "Of course, if your work schedule permits." The sarcasm in those words was evident. No matter how beautifully she dressed or how perfect her manners were, in her mother-in-law's eyes, she would always be an outsider. Still, she smiled. Thank you, Patricia. I'd be delighted to join. I can adjust my client meetings. Because this, too, was an investment. However, this time the investment was in her future with her beloved husband. Outside the window, Boston's cityscape seemed to silently watch over centuries of history. In the large mirror of La Spasa, the upscale bridal salon on Newbury Street, Emily's reflection shimmered. The pure white silk organza dress billowed around her like a cloud. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows made the beaded embroidery sparkle. She looks like an angel, Patricia said, tearing up. Her Hermes scarf fluttered with her emotional gesture. It reminds me of Sarah's wedding dress. She was just as beautiful. Kate stepped back discreetly, quietly observing this touching moment. As Emily's maid of honor, she had been invited to the final dress fitting. Though her appearance in a navy Chanel suit was not out of place in this salon, she couldn't help feeling a subtle distance. "Kate, would you take a picture?" Emily called out cheerfully. But before she could respond, Patricia quickly intervened. "Oh, I'll take it. This will be an important family record." Everyone in the room understood the implied meaning of those words. Kate nodded silently and took out a professional photographer's business card from her Hermes bag. "This photographer always handles our corporate events at the bank. Shall I make a reservation for the wedding day?" "Wonderful," Emily responded. Meanwhile, Patricia pursed her lips. "But we have our traditional photographer who has captured all Mitchell family weddings." "Mother," Emily said through the mirror. "I want to use Kate's suggested photographer. I've seen his portfolio, and his work is beautiful." Patricia's expression froze for a moment. "Well, do as you please." However, she cast a meaningful glance at Kate. Choices that disregard tradition come with their own consequences. The private dining room, the Bristol, at the Four Seasons Hotel was bathed in soft evening light. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow, and pristine white damask tablecloths were beautifully laid out. Final confirmation of the seating chart, Jessica, the wedding planner, gracefully picked up her clipboard. At the main table, the immediate family members of both sides. "Wait a minute," Emily suddenly spoke up. "Kate's name isn't at the family table." Patricia calmly explained, "Oh, I apologize. Just a misunderstanding." "But changes would be difficult at this point, wouldn't they?" "No, it's not a problem," Jessica immediately tried to respond. "I can make the adjustment." "Yes, well," Patricia interrupted with a smile. "But with this many guests for the rehearsal dinner, rearranging seats might inconvenience other guests." Kate quietly stood up. Her Chanel pumps made a small sound on the marble floor. "Don't worry, Patricia. I'm fine at another table." At that moment, Robert unusually spoke up. "No, that's wrong. Kate is my wife. She should be at the main table." The room's atmosphere froze. Patricia stared at her son, and her eyes held a coldness he had never seen before. Seated on an elegant sofa under the luxurious chandelier, Kate was checking work emails on her tablet while waiting for her husband. She overheard a conversation from a nearby table. "Yes, Patricia says that investment banker woman took advantage of her son's weakness. Well, she's quite different from Sarah, who was so cultured. How dare she, with no family background?" Kate's fingers stopped on the tablet screen. She felt her spine freeze while her cheeks burned. "Pardon my interruption of your gossip, James," Emily's fiancé suddenly spoke. The cardiac surgeon turned to the ladies with a truly gentlemanly manner. "Don't you think making such crude speculations about others' lives goes against Boston high society's etiquette?" The women blushed and hurriedly left their seats. James sat down next to Kate. "Don't let it bother you. Aunt Patricia is just trapped in her own values. But that's her problem, not yours." Kate gave him a grateful smile. However, her eyes couldn't hide her anxiety about tomorrow's wedding. Through these 3 scenes, invisible threads of tension gradually tightened. It was like a quiet tectonic shift beneath the elegant mask of Boston's high society. And everyone was beginning to sense that this tension would soon reach a decisive moment. Outside the window, Boston's street lights began to illuminate one by one, and the pre-wedding evening silence enveloped the city. However, this silence was merely a momentary calm before the coming storm. The Boston twilight cast deep indigo light through the stained glass of the Four Seasons Hotel. In the grand ballroom, over 300 guests were immersed in the melody of a classical string quartet. White and gold decorations elegantly reflected the light from chandeliers boasting 100 years of history. Emily was a bride who seemed to have stepped out of a painting. Her custom-made Vera Wang dress added supreme elegance to her dignified bearing as a physician. Her vows at the altar resonated powerfully in the silence, and tears of emotion glistened in the guests' eyes. The newly married couple was welcomed with warm applause from the guests. Kate, perfectly fulfilling her role as maid of honor, could sense her mother-in-law's dominating presence. Patricia was gracefully exchanging words with Boston's notables, like a queen of high society. "It was a wonderful ceremony," a trustee of the Boston Symphony Orchestra exclaimed admiringly. "Beautifully carrying on the Mitchell family tradition." "Thank you," Patricia's voice was filled with pride and confidence. "Our family has for generations." At that moment, waiters began serving the main course. Silver cloches were lifted one after another, releasing rich aromas. Selected wines were poured into glasses, making the crystals sparkle. However, nothing was placed in front of Kate. At first, she thought it was just a mistake. But as dishes were served to all the surrounding tables, her place remained empty. An unsettling atmosphere began to spread among those at the table. "Excuse me," Kate called out to a nearby waiter, trying to be as discreet as possible. "Is my meal still coming?" The young waiter looked confused and exchanged glances with the service manager. Then, Patricia's cold voice rang out. "You should be grateful just to be allowed to sit here." Those words cut through the glamorous banquet atmosphere like a blade of ice. The 300 guests were instantly enveloped in silence. Emily was stunned, and the groom James frowned. And Robert stared at his mother with an expression she had never seen before. Kate slowly removed the napkin from her lap and placed it on the table. Dressed in a Chanel evening gown, she rose gracefully. Her gesture carried the dignity of an analyst who had successfully closed numerous important negotiations on Wall Street. "Then this outsider will divorce and leave." Those words, though quiet, resonated throughout the venue. They had a transparent, sharp ring, as if years of patience had crystallized in an instant. The blood drained from Patricia's face. It was a moment when the mask of Boston society's queen shattered before everyone's eyes. Wait, please. That cry no longer held any trace of elegance. Patricia stood up in confusion, knocking over her wine glass. Deep red wine spread across the pristine white tablecloth. The scene seemed like a portent of the chaos to come. Robert stood up. "Mother, this is unforgivable." His voice carried unprecedented anger. "Kate is my wife. I'm proud of her for silently enduring your harassment these past 3 years." Emily was crying in her pure white bridal gown. "Mother, how could you do this?" Murmurs spread through the venue. Boston's high society dignitaries lowered their eyes in embarrassment. The church priest sighed deeply, and charity board members exchanged glances. Then, wedding planner Jessica confessed in a trembling voice, "Actually, I received special instructions from Patricia not to prepare a meal for Kate." Her words shocked the venue further. The Mitchell family's reputation, built over many years, was crumbling. Patricia's social circle friends began taking steps away from her, one by one. "This is quite something," a Society page reporter from the Boston Globe whispered to his neighbor. "I can already see tomorrow's headline." The setting sun was sinking into the post-rain sky, its deep crimson light streaming through the ballroom's large windows. That light silently illuminated the family on the brink of dramatic change. A tense atmosphere filled the Four Seasons Hotel's grand ballroom. The chandelier light still shone elegantly, but now it mercilessly illuminated a family falling apart. Large tears fell on Emily's pure white wedding dress. James held the bride's shoulders gently, desperately supporting her. 300 guests watched the unfolding events with bated breath, as if witnessing high society's finest drama. "Mother, why?" Emily's voice trembled. "It's my wedding day. Why would you?" When the wedding planner Jessica spoke again, her voice carried resolve. "I'll tell everything. This is my professional responsibility." Patricia tried frantically to stop her, but it was too late. Patricia's instructions began when wedding preparations started. Jessica operated her tablet with trembling hands, opening saved emails. From the dress shop photo shoot to the rehearsal dinner seating, and today's meal, everything was planned. "You intended to ruin my marriage?" Kate's voice was calm, but intense emotions swirled in her eyes. "No." Patricia cried out. "I was just trying to protect the family." Anxiety spread beneath her perfect makeup. The Mitchell family has been Boston's pride for generations. That bloodline. Bloodline? Robert's voice resonated deeply. "Mother, we're living in the 21st century. Do you realize how many people your outdated thinking has hurt?" Then, another voice rose from the back of the venue. "May I speak?" Margaret Williams, the associate priest of St. Paul's Church, quietly stepped forward. She had been trusted as the Mitchell family's spiritual pillar for over 30 years. "Patricia, you confessed your true feelings to me during last month's confession." Margaret's voice was warm yet firm. "You're too caught up in your feelings for Sarah. It's not love, but a prison of your own pride." The blood drained from Patricia's face. Her hands began to shake. "But Sarah was perfect, from a Boston noble family, cultured, my ideal." "Sarah is gone, Mother." Robert's voice rang out quietly but decisively. in a car accident 7 years ago. She's not coming back. And Kate is not a substitute. She's the new light in my life. Emily stood up crying. Mother, I can't stay silent anymore. Remember when Kate was hospitalized? A new tension ran through the venue. Last year, during her acute cholecystitis, you hesitated to go to the hospital. You said it would affect the Mitchell family's reputation. But when Kate's condition became serious and needed emergency surgery, do you know who stayed by her side all night? Patricia was at a loss for words. Yes, Kate's parents. They may be middle class, but their love was real. And they tried to accept our family. Yet you. The groom, James, quietly stepped forward. With the cool eyes of a cardiac surgeon, he gazed at Patricia. Mother-in-law, as a doctor, I've faced many hearts. But I've never seen hearts so deeply wounded as today. At those words, Patricia's shoulders shook violently. Her social circle friends moved away from her, one by one. The dignity she had built over years as society's queen was crumbling like a sand castle, and she watched it happen in a daze. Patricia's voice broke off. I was wrong. Suddenly, she collapsed into a chair. Her perfectly arranged hair disheveled, her Hermes scarf falling to the floor. She looked like a noblewoman stripped of her mask. Everyone, I deeply apologize. Robert stepped forward and bowed to the guests. Today, we've shown you an ugly side of our family. However, he looked at Kate. I want to use this opportunity to rebuild our family bonds in a true sense. Emily and James quietly stepped forward. Our wedding certainly didn't go as planned, Emily said, wiping her tears. But I sincerely hope this day becomes a new starting point for our family. Outside the window, night was falling over Boston. The room's atmosphere was still heavy and damp, but somehow, a ray of hope seemed to be breaking through. And everyone felt it. This wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. However, that night, the lights in Patricia's mansion never went out. The queen of society was facing true solitude for the first time in her life. Winter had come to Beacon Hill. The Mitchell family mansion, once filled with warm light, was now wrapped in silence. The garden plants slumbered in the freezing air, and the inherited Boston fern's leaves seemed to carry an even deeper green than usual. Patricia sat before the study's fireplace, turning the pages of an album. Sarah and Robert's wedding photos, Emily's graduation, and then, she paused. There was a photo of Robert and Kate's wedding. The newlyweds' eyes held unmistakable love, and their smiles radiated pure happiness. Why couldn't I see this before? Patricia murmured to herself. The fireplace flames flickered, softly illuminating her tired expression. In the 6 months since the wedding, her life had changed dramatically. Invitations from her former society friends had ceased, and she was asked to voluntarily resign from the Charity Association's board. Even at Sunday services at St. Paul's Church, other parishioners kept their distance. The phone didn't ring, and no emails came. The social position she had built over 30 years had crumbled overnight. Surprisingly, it was Margaret, the associate priest, who supported her through this. In weekly counseling sessions, Patricia slowly began confronting her own twisted obsessions. Sometimes, in our love, we lose sight of what's most precious, Margaret's words still echoed in her ears. But it's never too late to realize this. Sitting at her desk, Patricia picked up her pen. With trembling hands, she began writing in an expensive Christmas card. To my beloved son, and to Kate. She took a deep breath and continued. I now understand how much my foolishness has hurt you both. I was too caught up in my feelings for Sarah to see the true happiness right in front of me. I won't ask for forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you this, I sincerely wish for your happiness. She wrote similar sentiments in the card for Emily and James. The responsibility for distorting the meaning of their wedding lay entirely with her. Acknowledging this was painful, yet also liberating. Patricia stood up, gazing at the completed cards. Outside, snow had begun falling quietly. People passing on the street were wrapped in warm coats, busy with Christmas preparations. Once, she too had hosted lavish parties in this season, shining as the center of society. But now, a different kind of warmth filled her heart. On the mantelpiece sat a postcard from Emily and James's honeymoon. Next to it, a photo of Robert and Kate visiting Paris. Though she hadn't responded to either, they represented a small hope that her family hadn't completely abandoned her. In a corner of the study lay unopened books on psychological counseling. Healing family relationships, intergenerational reconciliation, all recommended by Margaret. I can change, Patricia whispered quietly. It's not too late. That night, the light from the windows of the old mansion on Beacon Hill seemed a little warmer than usual. And the accumulating snow gently blanketed the mistakes of the past, quietly painting the city white. A new year was approaching. And it marked not just a change in the calendar, but the beginning of a new chapter for one woman and her family. Patricia stood by the window, watching the snowy scene, offering a small prayer. A prayer that this time, they could restore their family bonds in the truest sense.